Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton, and today we are going to talk about a new psychiatric emergency department that's opened in Hampton, which is very unusual and very special. My guest is Stacy Johnson, who heads it up. Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me today.
I went to the ribbon cutting, and it's just a beautiful facility. But before we talk about what you have, I want to talk about the need.
Sure.
Why do we need a psychiatric ED? ER. There's emergency rooms,
Sure.
In Riverside and in Centera.
Sure. So what a typical experience is like, I think everyone that's probably listening, everyone in this room has gone to a medical emergency department before. Very stimulating environment.
Oh, lights are on, people are moving, things are beeping.
Absolutely. So it doesn't necessarily exude a calm environment, and oftentimes that's what psychiatric patients need and look for, is really some sensory de-escalation. So there's also a couple other components and how those areas are staffed. They're very well staffed to treat medical emergencies, traumas, and they're by far the experts in all of that. So what we wanted to do was create an environment that was primary for psychiatric, mental health, behavioral health, addictions, recovery, substance use disorders, an environment where they could go and all the team members there are experts in treating those types of conditions.
Yeah, and even in a medical emergency room, they will treat detox. You can begin to do that.
Sure,
but
absolutely.
Really, your psychiatric treatment doesn't start until they're referred somewhere. I mean, a lot of times there's not a psychiatrist there or someone trained in that. They're consulting in on video, and this will put them, it will start treatment sooner,
absolutely.
Right?
So about three and a half years ago, we took a look at what was going on in our emergency departments medically, who were the patients that were there a bit longer, and what kinds of things did we need to do or change as a health system to really help expedite that care and ensure folks were getting the highest level of care and most appropriate care as possible. And that's sort of where the premise for this came from, and looked at several different models before we landed on this. And the goal is really to start that treatment. The plan in our emergency department is to follow an SBIRT model. So it's screening, brief intervention, referral, and treatment, and all that's going to happen the minute you walk in. It's not waiting for a teledoc to join in.
Right.
It's
or
not
for you to get transferred to a facility,
Correct.
which could take days.
It can take days, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You're not waiting for law enforcement to potentially transport you to another facility. It was really, how do we get patients to the right place to begin with and start their care from the minute they arrive?
Now, has the need tremendously increased? Because, it's a top concern of people on surveys, mental health. It's in the culture now in a way it didn't used to be.
Sure. So I think you actually phrased that incredibly well. So destigmatization is happening. It's alive and well, and it's amazing. If you've known me and had a conversation with me about mental health, I think one of my goals as a mental health leader would be, let's talk about mental health as much as we do our physical health. And I think the world is really starting to shift. So COVID happened several years back, and I think a lot of members of our community felt an increase in anxiety, depression, substance use increased. However, at the same time, the comfort talking about that also increased. So what we saw was a rise in folks seeking services.
Yeah, I think there was that temporary sort of need, but it also kind of woke people up oh, this is depression or anxiety or whatever. Because that was such a tough time. People were isolated, lost their jobs, like all kinds of things happened.
Stressors were very much so alive and well. I mean, children who are social beings not being able to go to school or play with their friends, and financial concerns. It really impacted our entire community, regardless of your age.
So we're talking about the emergency department now,
Sure.
but there's there's another hospital that it's attached to pretty seamlessly, by the way. It looks great.
Yes, absolutely. So we have in our hospital itself, we have an inpatient adolescent unit, acute care unit. We have 3 adult units on the inpatient side as well, and really we can treat anything from a depressive disorder, postpartum, to truly psychotic disorders. So really across that spectrum. Over the last couple of years, we've also added outpatient services. So I think what was really important to us as we looked at the development of our emergency department was where else are there gaps? So then we made a decision to do a day treatment program for recovery services. That's called a partial hospitalization program, a PHP. So that runs 9 to 3, Monday through Friday. We have a step down, which is an intensive outpatient program. It's 3 hours a day, 4 days a week. And then we just recently opened the exact same levels of care on the mental health side. So folks' primary concern is a mental health disorder, and then slated for early next year is a general outpatient clinic, really just like your primary care doctor, where you can go and, touch base, hey, how are things going? See them perhaps every 30, 60, 90 days if medications are needed to be refilled. And it's also seeing a therapist as well. So it's not only a medical, provider, it's the therapy aspect as well.
So ideally, much like our medical health, we want to take care of ourselves early. We don't want to end up in an emergency room, but if we need to, walk us through what this facility, how it's organized and what it offers.
Sure. So I just spoke about the expert model. So I think we had such an advantage building this from the ground up because we actually got to build our clinical model and then our environment to match that. I think what happens it's amazing.
Yeah, right. Normally you build a building and then you figure out how to divide it up.
Exactly. So we were really able to build our environment for the safety of the patients, the safety of the team, and truly what that flow looks like. So if you walk in our front door, you'll be greeted with a patient access representative, exactly like if you were going to a medical emergency department. Hey, what's your name? Why are you here? What's going on? From there, you would either go to a waiting room, which I think is going to be our rarity for our patients. Then you'd go into the screening room, hearing a little bit more about what's going on. We're going to make sure that you are safe to be alone at any point in time through the next several steps. Then you'd go to our triage area where a nurse is going to make sure you're okay medically and that might not be the cause of concern that led to your visit that day. Then you'll see a provider and say, what's going on? And we'll get a little bit deeper each step of the way. And they're going to make some initial recommendations. Like, do we need to refer to outpatient? Is this somebody who might benefit from a little time in a calming environment? Is this an inpatient recommendation? Do we need to enlist additional resources? And then we make sure you as a person would be physically safe, and then you would enter into our community environment where you would either be assigned an area in the community or a private room contingent upon your symptoms and diagnosis and what's going on.
And this mirrors, so you've got that going on the adult side and on the adolescent side, which I think it's really unusual. There has not been enough mental health treatment for people under 21.
So we're
under 18.
Yes,
wherever your break is.
Absolutely. So in our emergency department, we are able to accept pediatrics, so anyone 5 up until 18, and then of course on the adult side 18 and over. On the inpatient side, we do treat specifically adolescents, and that's that 12 to 18 range. But
Such a critical need.
It's a huge need, and we're seeing that need continue to increase throughout the years. So it's really an amazing opportunity for folks in this community. So even though we don't have all of the levels of care within our facility for pediatrics, we're able to keep folks safe until they can get to that next appropriate treatment.
And I do want to say we've focused on people who voluntarily come in because they're feeling self-harm or unable, to deal with their addiction or whatever reason they come in voluntarily. But there are some people, particularly families, who can't handle someone in a mental health crisis, who may call the police, or someone who may be, out in public and picked up by the police. How does that work? Because right now, a police officer takes them to the emergency room and has to stay with them off the street streets, not doing their job, but staying with someone if there's a potential for an arrest there.
Yes, you're right. And those can take prolonged periods of time. I think the other thing to note with law enforcement is they are then required to transport that individual if they are involuntarily recommended to a psychiatric facility. So,
and that could be anywhere across the state.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So our goal in the development of this was to have a really close relationship with emergency services and what that would look like. So we've really partnered with them and built an algorithm as to who can come to our ED, who might be most appropriate for a medical emergency department. So they've been great partners. And through this, we've also developed a relationship with law enforcement so that we can have an individual on site who would be able to assume if it's an emergency custody order or that TDO to really help that individual at that point in time and keep law enforcement folks on the streets where they need to be.
Which I think is also, it's better treatment. Being guarded by an officer or being in a big loud emergency room with the doors open so everybody can see this will be much more calming, much quicker, I would think.
No, absolutely. And really our goal through this and the way that we're approaching our relationship with law enforcement is to ensure that the patient really has the medical interventions that are necessary so that we can avoid any forensic or police intervention. So that's really our goal in this space, is for our team members to be able to provide and expedite any medical interventions that might occur, whether that be a medication or a therapy or whatever it's appropriate for that individual.
What haven't I asked? This is a really big deal for the City of Hampton because you're the first in the state, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's a big deal right there. We're happy to have it in Hampton.
Yes.
Obviously, you're treating people from the region. We don't get it exclusively, but, it's a huge resource for our officers, for our community.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been incredibly exciting, and it's been amazing to see the team grow and build this program from the ground up. I think that having the mixed model that we have, where we've got a community environment and individual patient rooms, is really going to lead to the success of this program.
Yeah.
I do want to mention that we will have therapists around the clock for any crisis intervention sessions that need to occur. So either 2 or 3, therapists. We'll also have the specialty mental health providers, mental health RNs, LPNs, techs, etc. And I think that they just make this amazing care team that provides such really great experience for our patients. So I certainly want to highlight that and their expertise in this.
So this experienced staff will begin treatment almost immediately.
Sure.
And will also then be able to refer out. So
Absolutely.
if someone's discharged, there's follow-up plan. They're not just, good luck to you. Not that you would do that anyway, but,
Certainly.
all that. Or they can be transferred into the slightly longer-term portion of the hospital.
Absolutely. So one approach that we took to the ED, which is a little bit different than we typically see in facilities, is we actually have a care team station as opposed to a nurses station. So all of our folks are together. That's providers, our therapists, our nurses, and we really want to encourage those conversations. Did the nurse see something that perhaps the provider didn't? And really have folks working together to determine what's the best next step for each individual. So being able to create that individualized care plan, and be it a referral to an outpatient provider or needing to collaborate with the community services board if somebody needs an evaluation for an involuntary admission. So our goal is really to provide that individualized care and ensure they get to that next step. So another thing I should mention, and I did mention that we've opened those outpatient services, but that was really a critical step for us so that folks do have something to step down to. But when leaving our emergency department, we really want to avoid those visits as much as possible, but are there whenever needed.
And it probably helps reduce them coming back. If they're getting the care they need on an ongoing basis, they probably don't have to come back. I mean, it all works together.
Absolutely.
And I do want to mention that the City of Hampton contributed to this, both for it being a huge community asset and for getting our officers back.
Yes, absolutely.
And being able to redeploy them where they truly need to be.
Yeah, we're incredibly excited to have this in Hampton, and certainly for the partnership, and couldn't have done it without them.
Thank you. Thank you. So I know I'm very excited. I have people in my family who have, mental health issues, and it's just so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's continue to talk about it. Let's be the change, and let's get folks comfortable with getting mental health treatment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much,
Thank
Stacey.
you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I hope you will realize this huge asset. Maybe you don't need it. Maybe one of your friends or family need it. But know that, like any regular emergency department, this is now there for when a crisis occurs. Thanks for watching.